If you're inspo tanks, and make no mistake, you've come to the right place. Just give to Neil the time to straight up blow your mind with a new show of Drawing a Blank.
It's Sunday, so it's time for another episode of Drawing a Blank. We're jumping into the world of Pyria today to draw one of my favorite dragons from the Wings of Fire series, Clearsight. Just a little warning before we get too far into this episode. I will be sharing a few minor spoilers from Wings of Fire, so if you have not read those books yet and don't want anything spoiled, which I personally think is the best way to experience these books, you might want to skip ahead to this timestamp, or alternatively, mute the video until that point. I promise to spoil nothing after that mark. But for now, I'm going to talk about Clearsight and why I love her. For those of you who haven't read the books but stuck around despite my warning, you naughty spoiler gremlins, I guess I can explain a little bit of Clearsight's backstory for you. So, Clearsight is a Nightwing, black dragons with the ability to breathe fire, and if born under the light of one or several of Pyria's 3 moons, can see into the future or read minds. Clearsight was born with the former special ability. Her ability to see into the future is stronger than most dragons, however. Instead of just seeing vague glimpses of what could happen, Clearsight is able to follow the paths of branching timelines to see their outcomes. This makes Clearsight a bit of a paranoid disaster, and at a young age she is frantically writing scrolls upon scrolls of details from her visions to try and reach a happy future for herself and those that she cares for. Clearsight tries so hard to use her abilities for good, and she's such a smart and kind dragon that it makes it really easy to fall in love with and look up to her. If you've read Book 11 of Wings of Fire, The Lost Continent, you probably agree with me that it's easy to see why the Pentala dragons worshipped the ground that she walked on. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on Wings of Fire, Rosalind Productions and I do a collaboration podcast talking about each Wings of Fire book in the series, and you can check out that playlist in the card above. As for my design of Clearsight, I had a few goals I was keeping in mind while working on her. I wanted her to look similar to Moonwatcher, since certain other characters compare the two in looks and personality often, while still keeping her looking unique. And I wanted to give her round, kind-looking features to match her personality. I'm still playing around with how much I want to deviate from the book's designs of my dragons, so don't be surprised if sometime down the line I completely change up my Wings of Fire designs. If you haven't read the books, just know that every book opens with beautiful drawings of what the dragon tribes look like, so that's what I'm roughly basing my drawings off of as well. Instead of sticking strictly to the books as a source, however, I'm really trying to make each character look unique by playing around with the facial structure and even making the horns different shapes to fit dragons' personalities better. I also don't bother drawing all the scale patterns because I'm trying to keep my design simple and character focused rather than detailed. So, I actually really goofed for this episode, and I did a lot of my experimental drawings of Clearsight after I did a more finished colored piece. Oops. That's how it be sometimes, I guess. But with that being said, I'm kind of glad I did, because now I get to show you guys why studies is really important before jumping into a project. Just as a reminder, I did this drawing before the doodles I just showed you guys. The drawings are actually about a week apart from each other. You can see little changes I made to Clearsight's design since then. Her face is rounder and softer. I moved the positions of her silver scales just a bit. Her horns have a much better round shape than in my previous drawings as well. And I've got a better idea on how I want her spines and wings to look like. So even though my drawings that I showed earlier are much rougher and not as polished as this one, I think it's cool to see what just a little bit more brainstorming and time can do for you and your art. I'm excited to draw more Wings of Fire characters for you guys in the future. This episode was definitely inspired by the release of the new book in the Wings of Fire series, The Lost Continent. And again, if you haven't checked out Wings of Fire yet, I highly recommend them. The first book, The Dragonette Prophecy, is available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook, as well as having a graphic novel with the sequel book, The Lost Heir, coming out later this year. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Drawing a Blank. There's a new poll on my Patreon page to decide who I'll be drawing in a few weeks' time. Axel from Kingdom Hearts or Leafeon from Pokemon. Pledging $5 a month lets you become part of the voting process, but even if you just donate $1, you can join my Discord server and make suggestions for what you'd like to see next. Thank you so much for watching, and please, stay inspired.